Hello, and welcome to Code Rhetoric with Tam Talk. This is your host, Tamara Abraham, and I'm the founder of Abraham Medical Coding Coach, LLC. So on today's episode, I wanted to talk about this particular topic. And that topic is, if you can read, you can code. And I'll repeat that. If you can read, you can code. So the reason why I chose this topic, because I wanted to kind of dig a little deeper into this statement about if you can read, you can code. And I wanted to clear up some myths, or again, to provide a little bit more understanding or concepts as it relates to the industry of coding. So I wrote some notes down, and mind me or don't mind me as I peruse them to share this information with you. So I want to share a story to get started. So many years ago, I was part of a coding leadership team. And one of the things that we did, we mentored individuals or other employees outside of the coding department who were interested in learning more about the coding industry or perhaps wanting to become a coder. So what we did, each leader presented their part, and part of that presentation was to kind of share how they became a coder and how they broke out into the coding industry up until the point of that presentation. So for me, I put a little twist on mine. I always start off saying how I told a little white lie, how I lied my way into the coding industry. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do that, because this, again, was many, many years ago, and that can get you locked up. So, but it's a joke, and I'm going to share that with you. So I always kind of, like I said, I always start my intro with, how I lied and broke into the coding industry through that lie. And so I share with that. So when I first applied for a role in, I'm going to say, billing and coding, I was interviewed by a recruiter. And so one of the questions that was asked is if I knew how to code, if I was familiar with ICD-9. My response was yes. So the interview process went well. I got the job. I got offered the role as a billing representative at the time. So my spouse at that time, I shared with my spouse, I got the job, I got the role, and my spouse at the time, he was happy, but he was a little hesitant, like, so what exactly will you be doing? And I was like, I'll be doing billing, and I'll be doing, I'll be looking up ICD-9 codes. And he was like, what is an ICD-9 code? And I had, I don't know. It's something to do with medicine was my response. But anyway, so I had a relative who actually worked in the healthcare industry. And so I reached out to her because at that point, my husband had me a little concerned about breaking out about this role. I knew I could do it, but because of his concern, I did reach out to a relative who did work in the healthcare industry to learn more about ICD-9. And so through our conversation, she did share, some things as it relates to, I'm saying billing or medical coding. But what the takeaway was her statement of, if you can read, you can code. If you can read, you can code. So I knew I could read. I graduated high school. I was in college, what have you. I knew I could read, so therefore I could code. So that's how I landed my role into the coding. I would say start off in the billing industry. And mind you, I was not a certified coder at that time. Didn't even know what a certified coder was. I just knew I could read. And someone took a chance on me and gave me a billing position. And so I went in there, and the first day on the job, there was an ICD-9 book. And part of that conversation from that relative was like, it's like you're looking up definitions in a dictionary. So if you know how to utilize a dictionary, you should be able to look up a code. So that's the mindset I went in on the first day. And of course I was trained. I had a great coworker who trained me, which was awesome. And so, I went through that. I did well, got the job, did well in the role, and progressed on to different positions. Again, this was before the certification, so I did work for a group, a large healthcare organization, where my certification was offered to take the training, and I took the training and, of course, passed the test. I'm a certified coder. It afforded me to work in different industries, or I'm going to say facets of coding, but the majority of my coding career has been in corporate compliance. It has been in corporate compliance. And another joke that I share is because I told a little white lie to get into the industry, God saw fit to put me in compliance as it relates to fraudulent behaviors. So I had to learn it and then teach it to others to ensure that our healthcare providers were not telling little white lies or committing fraudulent behaviors in healthcare. So that's my spiel. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. But again, I did not lie because the role one did not require a coding certification. And I didn't know how to read. And this was at the time where there wasn't any pre-employment coding assessments. There weren't any pre-testing. Again, like I said, this was many, many years ago. So I'm sure if there was a coding test, I would not be here talking to you about coding today because I would surely fail. But anyway, so here we are. But that's my story. That's how I broke out into the industry, and I've been thriving ever since. I've held roles, and like I said, in different position leadership roles. Matter of fact, I was like the manager of compliance. I was a compliance officer. I've held many leadership roles: coding supervisor, coding manager, auditor, corporate compliance, all of that. So I've touched on many facets of the medical coding and compliance industry. So I want to go back to the topic again. If you can read, you can code. There's more to that statement than what it's really saying. So some of the characteristics of if you can read, you can code is you have to have really good reading comprehension skills. You have to pay attention to detail. And the reason why I say this, and I'm speaking from experience, is because coding, though it seems pretty straightforward, if you can read, you can code, you have to understand how to use the codes. You have to understand how to apply the codes. You have to make the codes make sense. And so coding is more of a strategic type of role. It is more of understanding the rules, the instructions as it relates to coding. Yes, you have the different books. You have your ICD-10 book. You have your CPT book. You have your HCPCS books, and you have other materials that are specific to the area of coding in which you're performing. You have to be able to read the instructions, and you have to be able to follow those instructions. You have to be able to read with comprehension so that you can have an understanding of what services that are being provided, as well as the diagnosis that was rendered to the patient. If you are unable to, I don't want to say if you're unable to, if your reading comprehension or your eye for detail is not keen, then being in the role of a coder may not be the role for you. That doesn't mean that you can't work in the coding industry. It just means that you may not be a good fit for a coder. And I say that I know plenty of colleagues some who I've worked with, and then some who I haven't worked with, but they are individuals who work in the healthcare industry who are credentialed as coders. They're credentialed as coders. I'm say they know enough to be dangerous. Excuse me, and I know that I'm jokingly saying that they know enough to be dangerous. They're credentialed. Some of them may be really good test takers. Some of them may work in another capacity in the healthcare industry, and coupled with that information or that knowledge or experience and their great test taking skills, they have the coding credential behind their name. Some of them don't strive to be coders or to code per se, but they strive to be armed with that information, that knowledge. So therefore, when they are in their current role or the role that they're pursuing or whatever the case may be, they are armed with that information. They are armed with that information. I know data analysts who are coder or who are credentialed as coders. I know provider relations directors or what have you. They are credentialed. I know healthcare providers. We all know healthcare providers who are credentialed as coders, but they still provide healthcare services. I know nurses who are credentialed as coders. So I say all to say is, just because you're credentialed doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in the role of a coder. The role of the coder is not for everybody. So perhaps if you're having some challenges with finding a coding gig, and you know that you know coding, you pass the test, that's great. But maybe that's not where your natural gift lies. Maybe that's not where God wants you to be. Yes, I sure did. I brought God into the conversation. It may not be where he wants you to be. Maybe he wants you to do something bigger. Maybe he wants you to be in another capacity, like I mentioned, the nurse or, the data analyst, or, and some other form of capacity with your credential. Now, for me, like I said, the bulk of my coding career has been in corporate compliance. I love corporate, okay? That's my thing. I love dressing corporate. I love speaking corporately. I love it. I enjoy it. And so, however, I can also, because I worked as a coder, and because I worked as an auditor, and because I worked as someone in a leadership role, because I worked as a trainer, I'm multifaceted. And then because I worked in multi-specialty groups, organizations, healthcare systems, so forth, I'm multifaceted. So if I need to dial it up, I'm able to dial it up. Or if I need to dial it down, I'm able to dial it down. Another thing that I want to talk with you about in regards to coding, I'm talking to you. You say, Tamara, what are you talking about? I'm talking to you. I'm podcasting. I'm talking to you about coding. This is another facet of coding. You perhaps may have the entrepreneurial spirit, and so you may have something, a gift about, or you may see coding in a different way than the rest of us. And so you may want to take that into an entrepreneurial role. Some of us we're coders, or we're coding leaders, and we have a particular niche in the coding niche. So for example, I say compliance is mine, or entrepreneurial. Someone else may be a particular specialty or what have you, but they have a niche within the niche. They have a niche within the niche. They may look at coding from a different aspect than the rest of us. And that's not a bad thing, but they want to share that gift or that perspective to the world. Just as I'm sharing with you how I entered into the coding industry, but my emphasis was on compliance. And then it kind of took on its own thing. And so now I'm here talking to you about coding on a podcast. I write about coding. Because I was a trainer, I have an online course for those who want to become coders. I have many coding camps for those who want to get an introduction or the basis of a new specialty. So I'm sharing my experience, I'm sharing my wisdom, my gift with other individuals about coding. What else is there I do? I consult for other healthcare organizations as it relates to coding. I audit for other healthcare organizations as it relates to coding. So I was able to take this particular niche and make it spin. So you heard the term of, if you have lemons, make lemonade. That's what I did with coding. I took lemons, and they weren't really lemons. I just took one object or one thing, and I made it into different things. Podcasting, blogging, trainer, entrepreneur, consultant, contractor, speaker. Oh, how could I forget about that? Yes, speaker. I love to talk. As I share with you right now, and I'm thinking, I was doing these things in my role as a coder, or in my role as a leader, or in my role as an auditor. I can remember creating a newsletter for a particular department that I worked for, and had the other coders as contributors, and then we sent it out to the department. It went out to like leadership. It went out to the physicians, the healthcare providers. It went out to other subspecialty departments within the department. And then they became contributors to the newsletter. It went out monthly. And we talked about the revenue cycle. We talked about things that are going well, things that we need to pay attention to, things that we need to work on. We gave kudos to specific employees within the department. So this is something that's been in the making. I was doing it long before now. Another item, or I didn't think that I can think about, is motivation. I was doing motivation in my role as a compliance coordinator, trying to motivate the coders through a quote. So for those of you who don't know, I also do another podcast called Monday Morning Motivation. And so I started somewhere. So even if you're in a coding role, think about the things that you're doing now or you've done in the past that may have some form or impact on how you will perform in the future. I know, I'll be honest with you, I used to always say that, I'm going to do coding, but coding is not going to always be like my end all be all. I was designed to do more. I felt like I was created to do more than just code. And that's not a bad thing if that's what you chose to do. That's not me speaking badly on the fact that, hey, you just want to code. I knew that was like there was something else there. Not because I wanted to be famous or anything like that. I just knew that there was more to my ambition. There was more to this. Because there has been plenty of times I wanted to, I would say, walk out of coding, or I knew that, okay, like I need to leave coding. I need to do more. Coding is great. Coding paid the bills. But there has to be more to this. And again, that was for me. And every time I decided, or in my mind, I decided I was going to look for something outside of the coding industry, what? A doctor commits fraud. Okay? A doctor commits fraud, or something happens, something majorly happens within the healthcare industry, and then it changed how things were done in the coding and compliance industry. And so those things or it changed the processes. So therefore it opened up new opportunities for me to evolve or to grow in this particular industry. So yeah, again, where you are now, take a look at what you're doing as a coder, or if you have the coding certification and you're still trying to find a role as a coder, think about some of the things that you are currently doing or you've done in the past and how you can, I don't want to say spin it, because that's lack of better words, spin it into something more to fit what you're called to do or you want to do. Okay? I also recall wanting to be a lawyer because I love compliance or enjoy compliance. And I remember sharing with my VP or AVP that I want to be an attorney. I want to go into law. And this has really given me an idea of, I guess I would say, the area of law, to see what it's like, being able to, do the research, the audits, the report writing, the presentation, to meet with the providers such as the client. It just kind of gave me that whole feel of the corporate arena. And she shared that, hey, this is really, you're getting your experience now. Who would have thought that I'm actually a first year law student? And that conversation took place many years ago. Many years ago. And I am a law student. So again, everything that you've done or you're doing, you're not doing it just to be doing it. There's a purpose of why you're doing it. A purpose you may know, some you don't know, but there's a purpose for that. So anyway, I've kind of deviated into the whole thing because it's like, as I'm talking to you, like I said, I took notes prior just to kind of share with you some pointers, but as I'm sharing them with you, I'm actually having aha moments at the same time. So I was like, I didn't think about what? Okay. So I want you too to have those aha moments. If you can read, you can code. If you can read, you can do anything that you want to do if you can read. But again, as it pertains to coding, you have to be able to read with comprehension, with an eye for detail. You have to be able to follow instructions. You have to make it make sense. Coding has to make sense. And the making sense part comes with the medical necessity part. You have to make it make sense. Why would I do a cardiac surgery for a hanging toenail? It doesn't make sense. So you have to make coding make sense. So again, if you can read, you can code. But to be in an actual coding role, you have to be able to have reading comprehension. You have to have an eye for detail. You have to, and research. You have to research, and you have to make coding make sense. Make it make sense. So that's actually all that I have for today as it relates to the topic. If you can read, you can code. Again, those were the takeaways. Just take a moment, evaluate where you are, look back where you've been and where you want to go, and see how you can take that little bit of information that you have and spin it into something better for yourself, or for your department, for your team. Again, take the lemon and make lemonade. So that's all that I have for you this week. Next week, we'll be talking about taking the coding entrepreneurship route. What is required to break out into the entrepreneurial journey. So until next time, be great. Also, visit our website at www.abrahammedicalcodingcoachllc.com to learn more as it relates to our mini coding camps. And these are all self-paced and virtual. Or if you're interested in becoming a certified medical coder, check out our online medical coding course. This is also self-paced. And then if you just want to learn more about coding, take a look at our blog. There's some good blog posts out there, or listen to our previous episodes as it relates to coding. Again, that is www.abrahammedicalcodingcoachllc.com. And toodles until next time.